guys, welcome to the first episode of my new phone buyback series. So as mentioned in one of my previous videos, this is a new series I was going to be doing on this channel. I was going to be buying back some phones that I previously had in my collection, and also some I just found nostalgic from when I was a kid. So first I have these three here, and then I'm also going to be featuring one of my new main phones, but this video is most likely going to work a little differently than my typical phone buyback videos, and let me get into that now. So typically when I try to order these, I try to order them in a way where they're all going to arrive around the same time on the same day, typically from the same carrier too. Now that obviously just makes things easier for me recording because I'm able to unbox and include them all in one clip. However, unfortunately, I have two more packages that are supposed to be out for delivery today from USPS, but they haven't arrived yet. So I want to just get these three out of the way, and we're also going to feature my new main phone, which I previously mentioned I was going to be getting as well. And then once those other ones come, I'm going to splice in the clip of those being unboxed, and then we're going to come back with all 5 of them set up, and we're going to review each one of them and get into them a little bit, and I'll tell you a little bit about them and why I wanted to get them. So as you may be able to tell, I moved those boxes off to the side. Might be able to see them in the corner there, but we're going to kick things off with my new main phone. This is an iPhone 16 Pro, non-Max. I did not want to get the Max again. I felt my 14 Pro Max was way too big. This is the Desert Titanium color. It is a 128 gigabyte. Again, I don't need any more storage. I barely used half of this. I'll show you guys that in a second. But yeah, I've had this phone for about 2 to 3 weeks now, and it's been great. The camera shutter button, I find it's in a little bit of a difficult spot because my hand does dig into there when I'm using the phone, but I've gotten over it. I've gotten used to it. It's really not that big of a deal. And overall, this phone is such a major improvement from my old phone. That 14 I had so many issues with. I'll get into those because it's actually quite a funny story on all the things I went through to get this phone. But first, let me just unlock it here. You can see I have just like a beach themed wallpaper. I actually got that from an app called Wallpy. There's a similar app on Android, but it is different. This one you can only download like a specific amount of photos per day, but they have some pretty nice wallpapers on there, and I felt it matched with the Desert Titanium on this phone. But yeah, just coming in here in settings, going into storage. Yeah, I have used 49 gigabytes and I have 78 left out of the 128. I absolutely do not need to pay for more storage. I never have. I never probably will. It just doesn't make sense to me. I have a good amount of apps on here, but it really doesn't use that much storage at all. So with that out of the way, we're going to start off with a device here that isn't really a phone. It's more of a tablet, but I found it to be interesting and something that may be collectible one day, so I wanted to pick it up. So you may not be able to tell what this is by just the box alone. We'll flip it around back here. This might be able to give you some hints. So basically in around 2017, or maybe it was 2016, Vizio decided to release an Android tablet. Its main purpose was to be used with their flagship line of TVs. I believe it was the C series. Any TV that runs Vizio's SmartCast operating system. Basically, you were able to use it as a TV remote and also cast other shows and stuff from other apps onto it. This one I have already set up, unlike all the other ones, which are still, all I did with them is open them up and make sure they turned on. This one I did set up because I have been using it a little bit. So yeah, it's turned on right now. Just unlock it for you guys really quick. This is just the base 8 gigabyte and I think it's like a Snapdragon 410 quad core processor model. There was a octa-core 16 gigabyte model. However, those are a lot harder to find. I couldn't find any of them on eBay, and I only paid $30 for this. So brand new in box, which you may be able to tell it's in absolutely immaculate condition. I think this was a steal of the deal because, again, these may disappear someday and they might become collectible. So I'm just glad I was able to pick it up. And then in the box here, it came with the dock and then the power cable. I can show you the dock here. I did take it out of the box already because, again, I've been using this. But you just plug the charger in back here and then place it on this dock. It does do wireless charging, obviously, and it'll charge overnight. And then whenever you're ready to use it, you can use it as a TV remote. But you can also just charge it using the micro USB port on the bottom in case you lose the dock or anything like that, which is nice. So yeah, let's move on to the next device. All right, and now let's move on to some actual phones. So you may sense a theme with this video. If I had to claim it as something, it would probably be like more oddities in the cell phone world. They're less than typical cell phones. You'll see what I mean when we get into it. But as I mentioned before, that Vizio was the only device I set up. The rest of these, I just took them out of the box real quick, made sure they turned on just so I wouldn't have to make any returns, and also took the shipping labels off the box for obvious reasons. So I think we're going to start off with this one here. So let's just move that out of the way and move on to this. So get it out of the package here. This is exactly how it came. I just removed the shipping label from it. There is a label on there, so I'm going to be careful how I open this. And yeah, so if you don't recognize what this is a Samsung Galaxy S5 Neo. I believe these came out around the same time as the S6, and it was supposed to be just a little bit of an updated S5. Some notable things is the back is a different texture, as you may be able to tell. It's more rubbery. It has no charging port cover flap, even though it does retain water resistance. And yeah, we just don't see these a lot in the US. This one, I believe, is a Canadian model, or it could be South American. I'm not entirely sure. The carrier was Tigo, if anybody in the comments knows which country that's from. But yeah, it does work perfectly fine. Just booting up here. And yeah, I paid $23 for this phone. I thought it was a pretty good deal. And yeah, so let's move on to the next one. And just to show you, it did boot up here. And we'll get this set up with the rest of them, and we'll come back and show all of them together, fully set up. And now let's move on to arguably what I feel is the best phone here, including the two packages I'm waiting on. So let's get right into it. I think it's this way, yes. So you might have seen that label and been able to tell what it is. This is a LG G7. So unlike the Galaxy S5 Neo, I had one of these before. You may remember it was in the gray color. It was a T-Mobile model. I don't think I was able to unlock it, weirdly enough. But yeah, I finally have another one of these. This one is in absolutely perfect condition, pretty much. Just taking a quick glance here, I don't see any imperfections anywhere. Yeah, it's in really good condition. And it was listed for $26. That's what I paid for it, just like the Samsung. It said it had an issue where it wouldn't connect to computers. And I did, again, turn this on and just make sure it functioned. Boot it up here real quick. And I plugged it into my PC, recognized immediately. They recognized it as a device perfectly fine. I didn't try to launch any programs with it, but it worked fine. So it might have just been some weird issue that the seller was having with their computer. But yeah, it worked perfectly fine with mine, so I'm not going to complain. So now I'm going to spend a little bit of time with these phones alone and get them all set up, and also wait for those other two packages to come. When they do come, I will splice in that video, and then again, we will be back when I set these all up. Alright guys, so it has been about an hour or two since I recorded that last clip, but so both of them have came. I mistakenly said before as well that these were coming from USPS. They actually came from UPS. But all I've done so far is just rip off the tracking labels and everything. And yeah, let's get right into it. I think we're going to start with the smaller one first. I'm hoping these aren't actually headphones, but that's the box it came in. But yeah, let's start with this. I did peel back the tape on this one because I could tell I was going to struggle on video trying to do so. And I think, yes. So this is, pull it out here. This is not a very common phone anymore, especially for the price I paid. This is an LG G Flex. I don't know if you guys remember these things, but it was the already bent phone from the factory, and they also have like healing back covers or something like that. We're just going to take it out of this OtterBox case. I don't think I'm going to use this case. It's quite large. I might eventually. I'll keep it in a bin or whatever. Yeah. Wow. Wow. This is the first time I ever held one of these. Wow. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Doesn't need charged. Has battery power already. Perfect. So yeah, this is the first generation G Flex. I believe it is a 32 gig, but we'll obviously figure that all out later. It is a Sprint model. Do these use these must use OLED screens. I am seeing a little bit of burn-in, nothing that I'm too concerned about. Perfect. So, okay, so this one looks like it's already set up. I'm gonna have to reset this and set it up stock again. Some sellers, I noticed, just leave it on this screen so they can show you it's not locked, but I'll reset it real quick. It'll only take like 10 minutes, and for now, let's get into the next phone. Alright, so I got the G Flex off in the corner, resetting, doing its thing, and let's get into this phone. This one I'm pretty excited about because I have the larger version, you could say, of this phone. So let's get this opened up here. The G Flex I paid $21 for. I ordered these phones off of Mercari, these two, because I had a $10 coupon. Sometimes Mercari will just give you like credits that you can use for any purchase, especially when you haven't used their app in a while, which I haven't. So that was nice of them, and it allowed me to buy these two phones. Alright, so I think I got all the tape out of here. Did I? Oh, I got a little piece here that's sticking still. Alright, perfect. So, I'm going to take the case off here. Ooh, this one's definitely going to need cleaned up. This is a Nokia 5. You may know I have the Nokia 6. In fact, I can pull that out really quick just to do a comparison. Yeah, so here's the 5, here's the 6. Very slightly different size-wise. This one has curved sides. Yeah, I like the silver color too. Awesome. So yeah, that's this one. We're gonna really quickly actually clean this one up. Let me grab a wipe. All right, so I was able to pull a good amount of gunk off of this phone. It looks very nice now. This thing is in immaculate condition, frankly, and it's had that screen protector on it, so screen is in equally as good condition, if you can see there. Let's turn it on. Perfect, power's right up. The other phones that I got, the G7 and the S5, those both needed charged when I got them, so I'm glad these ones had some charge in them still. Let that boot up real quick. All right, perfect. So it looks like the seller reset this one already. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to, just like the last one, set these two up, and then I'll come back to you guys when I got everything set up. So it has been about 2 days, and I have finally gotten the chance to go through all of these and fully set them up, get them to where I want them to be. So now we're going to go through them. Let's start off with the Vizio. So as I mentioned before, this is inherently not a cell phone. There's no camera, there's no earpiece speaker or anything like that. There's just a power button up here, a top firing speaker, a headphone jack, volume rockers over here, another speaker at the bottom, and then a micro USB port. You can't put a SIM card in this, obviously. It was made to be used with Vizio TVs, as I mentioned before. So with that being said, I did put some streaming apps on here that I would be able to cast my TV, like HBO Max, Pluto, Amazon Prime Video, YouTube, Spotify. And then coming in here into the Vizio app, this is where all the fun stuff is to use it with a TV. So from here, I can just control my TV with the remote. There is no input lag, surprisingly enough. That's probably more based on my Wi-Fi than anything else. Like right now, it's showing that my TV is watching Prime Video because it is. And then I can also come in here and launch different apps using this phone, and it'll launch them onto my TV. Same with different shows, like Vizio has their own watch-free network. I can cast certain channels to my TV. And then also use the voice remote, which is nice because the remote that came with my TV, I have a Vizio, I think it's a V-Series 43-inch in my bedroom. I can use this to use a microphone remote because the remote that came with my TV does not have that capability. So I have actually been using this a fair bit. The battery life's pretty good as well. I've only had to charge it once considering I don't use it that much. But I tried getting CPU-Z on here to show you guys some more of the specs, but unfortunately it just would not install. No matter what I did, I tried installing older versions of it. It just wouldn't get on here. But what I believe is the internal specs would be a Snapdragon 410, a gig of RAM, and then 8 gigs of storage. We can at least go in here, and I can show you the storage. Yeah, so you can see there it would be an 8 gigabyte because obviously this system takes some of that storage. And then coming down here, this one is running Android 6. That is the last version of software that these things received. They came out on Android 5. Obviously, that's not as usable as it used to be. You may notice here some of these apps are actually their older versions. But for now, they are still working. And I may look into the future into putting a custom ROM on this thing. It looks like there is some development on XDA forums. Not so much for the octa-core higher end model of this, but more so for this base quad-core processor. It looks like there's certain versions of Lineage I may be able to get on here, hopefully. But yeah, so that's just a quick little look at the Vizio. So moving on here, now we're going to take a peek at the LG. As mentioned before, this is a LG G Flex, first generation, and this was the weirdest part of setting up this phone for sure. This curve, it doesn't come out great on video, but in person, it's aggressive. That's the best way I can put it. It really does take your eyes a second to get used to, especially scrolling through menus and stuff. I'll just try to scroll through settings here, see if you guys can tell at all. It's not a uniform scroll. You can tell it kind of like curves upwards with the screen. It's quite a weird experience, but this phone is very cool. I'm glad I finally have one of these. If you don't know, this is a 6-inch AMOLED screen. And the way I like to think about this was LG's, it was like a concept phone. This was their way of trying to get into this curved AMOLED game, like Samsung has their Edge phones and stuff like that. LG was just doing it a little differently because obviously, to accommodate for this curve, they had to use a plastic OLED screen, which does have some bendability. I am not going to put it flat on a table and flatten it out as many people did back in the day in reviews, mainly because this phone is, God, probably like 8-9 years old. I don't know if the screen still has the ability to be flexed like that, but anyway, just a few preliminary specs. This phone is running Android 4.4.2. Because of that, I couldn't get my normal setup applications on here. There was some things that wouldn't download. Like coming in here, I had to get Facebook and Instagram Lite because the normal apps just would not function. But coming into CPU-Z here, we can see this phone has a Snapdragon 800 processor. It's a quad-core. It's a 32 gig with 2 gigs of RAM, 720p screen at 6 inches, Android 4.4.2, doesn't tell me the battery capacity. However, the battery life on this phone is also very good. I fully charged it when I set it up and used it for a few hours, honestly. I started watching a few YouTube videos on it just to see what the screen was like, and it's still at 85%. So yeah, this is overall a very nice phone. I'm very happy to have this in my collection. Yeah. I also realized I was wrong with some of the prices on these phones, so while we're going through this, we're also just going to show the actual listings I bought these from and the price I paid. So starting off here with the Vizio, I paid $31 for this phone, or well, technically $32, with free shipping. And then for the LG, I paid $21 plus shipping as well. But for this phone, Mercari gave me a $10 credit, so technically I paid would have been like $17. So yeah, let's move on to the next. So moving on here to the Galaxy S5 Neo, let me just show you the listing real quick. I actually paid $27 for this. I believe I said I paid like $23 before. I was wrong. But this phone, as mentioned before, is basically an upgraded version of the S5. I believe it came out around the same time as the S6. At least that's what I'm assuming, because it has the same software update history. When I got this phone, speaking of which, it was running Android 6. I did update it to 7. Some people might disagree with that decision. However, I did it because I already have an S5 on Android 6. It's a normal S5. The special version, the upgraded version of the S5, I want it to be on its upgraded, newer software. So with that being said, it is now running Android 7.1.1. Coming in here to CPU-Z. Takes a while to load. There we go. I believe this is the same processor as an S6. Let me actually pull one out real quick so we can compare. Okay, so it looks like I might have been slightly wrong. So this is just a box standard S6, 32 gigabyte. Comparing here, they are both octa-core processors. However, this one, it's a 7420 and this one's a 7580. I have no idea what that means, frankly. I'd assume this one is technically a little newer, but it is clocked lower at a lower speed, so I'm assuming it's not as good. It also looks like the GPU chips are a little bit different there, if you can see. However, I don't really notice a difference between performance on both of these, or either of these. This one obviously has a 1080p screen, since it is based off an S5 still. 16 gigs of storage, 2 gigs of RAM. This one obviously has 3 and 32 gigs. They're both running Android 7 as well, and doesn't really tell me much about the batteries here. So this phone, I really wanted one of these because when they came out, like I said before, we didn't really get much of these in the US. This one, I was wrong about the carrier as well. If there's any carrier apps still on here. Nope, looks like I deleted them all. But the carrier of this phone is Fido, actually. So if anybody... I just dropped my S6. Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, if anybody in the comments knows by chance what country that carrier is from, please let me know. I'm assuming either Canada or somewhere in South America. I wouldn't imagine it came from overseas, but yeah, either way, it's a very nice device to have. And moving on here to the Nokia 5. This phone, I believe I paid $17 for. Yes, so she had sent me a offer for the 1782, and I immediately bought it. I had this phone saved for like a week. I was keeping my eye on it, but I didn't really want to pay $25 plus shipping. So when she sent me that offer, I couldn't say no. I bought it immediately. And after cleaning it up, you can see in that picture, it was very dirty and had that nasty screen protector on it. As you can tell, it cleaned up very nicely. There's basically no damage on the body or the screen. This phone is basically a carbon copy of the Nokia 6, just a little bit smaller, I believe. However, I didn't realize with my Nokia 6, that is a 64 gigabyte phone, and it came base 32. So I kind of assumed this would also be a 32 gigabyte. However, I was wrong. It's actually a 16 gigabyte, even though it does use the same processor and everything. So coming in here, it's a Snapdragon 430 hexa-core processor. And then, as you can see there, 16 gig with 2 gigs of RAM. I believe the Nokia 6 is 3 gigs of RAM. However, we'll pull that out in a second to check. Screen is 5.2 inches at 720p. And it's running Android 9. So real quick, let's pull out the Nokia 6 and just compare specs here. So pulling out the Nokia 6 here, it does look like they are both Snapdragon 430 processors. However, this one is a hexa-core and this one is an octa-core. Looks like they're both 28 nanometer chips and they both have Adreno 505 GPUs. This one obviously has a slightly bigger screen and it's also 1080p. And as I mentioned before, this one is a 16 gigs with actually 4 gigs of RAM. So technically, double the RAM and then a little more than double the storage on this one. They're both running Android 9. These did get the same upgrade cycle. And then again, nothing about the batteries. But either way, it's very nice to have both of these phones because we really don't see much of Nokia in the US in general, at least these newer Android phones. They are sold here, obviously, but not many people bought them. So it's just nice to have both of these. I do want to get I think it's a 7.1 Plus. Whatever one has that circular camera lens and then has like gold accents around it. I really like the look of that phone too. So yeah, just nice to have these two. Very glad I bought them. And last but certainly not least, we're going to move on to the G7 and Raspberry Rose. As you may remember, I had one of these before in the gray color. I actually have no idea what happened to that phone. I tried looking on my Mercari to see if I had sold it, but I hadn't, so I'm assuming I traded it off to somebody. Either way, it's nice to have another one of these again, especially in a much better color. It was between this and a blue one. I figured this would be a better color. The only reason I was really interested in the blue was because it had matte glass instead of this glossy one. But I'm very happy to have this one, and just like my old one, this one was also a T-Mobile model. However, this one actually was able to be unlocked, if I could get in here. Yeah, so it permanently unlocked, can be used with any carrier. Mine, for whatever reason, couldn't have been. Maybe I had a bad ESN, but this one I could technically use on a carrier if I wanted to, because I have AT&T. And I tried to download CPU-Z on this phone as well. Oh, it's right here, actually. So coming in here, this is a Snapdragon 845 device, hexa-core or octa-core processor. Coming in here, 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage, 1440p screen. Overall, it's your typical Android 10, typical Android flagship from around the same era as the S9. Still a very nice phone to use today. It's not slow at all. Yeah, it's just a very nice collection piece to have again, and again, in a much better color. And just showing you here, I paid $37 for this phone. And again, for whatever reason, the eBay seller who sold it listed it as having an issue where it would not connect to computers. However, I plugged it into my computer and it connected immediately, and I was able to look at the files and everything. So, not entirely sure what happened there, if it was just an issue with their computer, but either way, it's a fully functional LG G7. And with that all being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is certainly not the last one I'm going to make. There's plenty more phones I'd like to buy back. On top of that, I'm hoping to have a trade lined up with one of my friends here in the near future. So with that all being said, keep an eye out for the next video. See you guys next time.